Bro, one
And
week before the NFL season starts and you're out there doing the crate challenge?
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Andrew Chang and Justin Goddard.
Hello and welcome to the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Built-in Buffalo Network. My name is Andrew Chang, and alongside me is my co-host, Justin Goddard. Tonight, we got a healthy agenda for you. We're going to briefly talk about the final preseason game, talk about Josh Allen getting in the NFL Top 100 list. We got a Wandering Buffalo interview with you, definitely a good one, so don't miss that. After that, Justin and I are going to talk about the final roster cutdowns. And then lastly, we're going to preview the first game of the regular season against the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find us on most social media and podcasting platforms by searching the Wandering Buffalo Podcast. And in addition, you can also find other amazing content and shows by looking up the Built-in Buffalo Network. But before we get into anything, I got to ask, Justin, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. Finally got our 53-man roster kind of stabilized. I'm sure there's going to be another couple, 2-3 moves over the next few days, but something that starts weighing on you after a while. And I'm just gearing up for football season. I want to know what guys are going to be out there, and where I think our strengths and weaknesses are, and start looking towards the season. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, and I think you said it. You said it perfectly. I'm just looking forward to a week-to-week basis of how this team matches up with the other guys, and football's back. I'm excited. You got to be excited if you're listening to this, and if not, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, football's back. All right, so without further ado, we got to talk about the most recent game the Bills just played, and that was the final preseason game against the Green Bay Packers. We're going to quickly go over this just because we got a pretty packed agenda, but we'll definitely need to talk about some key areas. Specifically, let's start with Josh Allen's performance. Earlier this week, Sean McDermott tossed it out Josh Allen in the first, I think, 3 series, just to knock off the rust, quote unquote. And there was little to no rust, in my opinion. He was very, very effective. He went 20 for 26, got 2 touchdowns, and looked like he was in NFL MVP form.
Yeah, I was very adamant about not wanting to see Josh Allen in preseason. Part of that was, how good he looked last year, and there was no preseason to warm him up. So it's kind of like, how much does he need it? But I'll tell you what, it was a little stressful seeing him out there. But boy, was it fun to watch. It was damn near perfect. It wasn't, bombs and stuff. It was very surgical on getting the team up and down the field. It made me even more hyped for the season to start.
Absolutely, and surgical is a very good adjective to describe how Josh Allen played. He's a very good intermediate thrower, and it's kind of funny because that was the biggest knock on him coming out. Like, he's probably not going to be good at that, but yet he's very good at that.
Right.
And, obviously he was surgical because of the amazing wide receiver core that he had around him, and that's going to lead us to our player spotlight of the game of, this preseason game for that matter. And that's Gabriel Davis. And I think Gabriel Davis, he went 8 for 8 or something like that and caught a touchdown. And he was just very effective as the Bills, 4th wide receiver or 3rd in this game, really. But regardless, I just thought Gabriel Davis made a real strong impact, and the continuity between him and Josh Allen is clearly growing, and I think Gabriel Davis is going to be able to eat in this offense.
Yeah, Gabe Davis looked really good in that game. My favorite part of his game was that one catch along the sideline where he did it looked like a defensive end swim move and scampered up the sideline for another 10 yards. I had some questions going into the season with John Brown leaving. They obviously alleviated that with Emmanuel Sanders, but it was kind of, wondering if Gabe Davis was going to be able to take that next step, or if he was just kind of an anomaly because of a numbers game and you can only cover so many people. And I'll tell you what, after seeing that performance and the way he's working with Josh Allen, if he was the number 2 receiver right now, I'd feel pretty good about it. And the beauty of the thing is that he's our wide receiver 4. And, we haven't even seen Steph Diggs out there with him yet, and he's eating out there, and he looks great.
Speaking of eating, we got to talk about the other 2 wide receivers, and that was Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley. The first time we see these 2 out on the field, not only as teammates, going back to SMU, but here as Bills teammates, and the first time that we saw Emmanuel Sanders on the field. And Cole Beasley picked up exactly where he left off. He was very, very good, always finding open spots out there in the field for Josh Allen to, easily get a good completion. And then Emmanuel Sanders, I really liked how he played in this game. And it's clear that we already knew this, but it's clear that he's a really good route runner. But he just made his presence known, and he was able to make an impact, at least from my opinion, even though we only had 3 series to work off of. But Josh was able to get him the ball, and it's clear there's also continuity developing there, which is great.
Yeah, and both these guys looked really good to me. I love watching Sanders play the game. He looks like he's a little kid just having a blast out there. Both these guys are really great in that, the short area, intermediate option routes and finding their way back to the quarterback when the play breaks down. And they're not often necessarily the first or second read, but those dudes are both always finding ways to get open. And if somebody's double covering Steph over the top, Sanders and Beasley are going to be working underneath. And, it was hard enough to cover Beasley alone when a play was breaking down like that, but now you really have that 3-level threat in Emmanuel Sanders. I think he's going to have a great season. I'm so excited for the receiving core that we have this year.
Yeah, me too. And speaking of great season, I tried picking up Emmanuel Sanders late in my most recent NFL fantasy football draft, and the guy right before me scooped him up. And that was a late round sleeper for whatever reason, but I'm telling you, I got high hopes for Emmanuel Sanders. Let's move on to the Bills defense. So, again, this was the first time that we got to see the Bills starting defense out there, and, the Packers put out their second string team, and they were able to string along these long drives, and it was kind of concerning to me the way that I saw how this defense was kind of bending, but that goes to the saying bend don't break defense, and it's true because the Packers held up 0 points on them. And I gotta say, the compression style defense that they do, keep everything in front, works really well, and it makes sense because of that, because they keep everything in front of them, and things naturally tight up when they get up to the end zone. And when you keep everything in front of you, it's harder for an NFL offense to score, and it's clearly evident, again, it's evident in this game at least, because the score was 19-0.
Yeah, and being a Bills fan, there's been, even before this regime, there's been a lot of the bend but don't break defenses. And you think eventually I'd get used to watching it and, knowing how it's going to work out. But it doesn't become any less frustrating to watch a team kind of looking like they're just marching down the field on you. But this team in particular, we've seen it through the preseason, even going through our depth. They look pretty adept at really keeping the ball in front of them, and you might get some yards and you might get some plays. But my overall concern is at the end of the year what our overall scoring defense looks like. And with the way our offense should be able to move the ball, even if more often than not you can keep those to field goals instead of touchdowns, it's going to be really hard to keep pace with this offense. And I think once the other team has to start throwing the ball all over the yard to try to keep pace, we're going to start seeing some more opportunistic plays being made. You're going to see Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer coming down with the interceptions. And just the way that it all looks like it's going to gel together, I'm very excited for how this team's going to look this year.
Yeah, and, I understand it's preseason, but this defense, or at least what I saw from it, kind of gave me, some, first year under Sean McDermott NFL defense. So, that's when Milano was a rookie, and then the Bills backed into the playoffs. It's exactly that. These teams would have these long drives, but it led to turnovers and no touchdowns and field goals. It's great, and if we can get that kind of production out of this defense, I think we're going to be happy campers. And to echo what you said, if you have a high power offense complementing that, we're in business. Anyways, let's move on to the NFL Top 100 list. As you know, Josh Allen came in number 10, right after his boy, Stephon Diggs at number 11. And I know, Justin, that you're not, this doesn't necessarily mean a lot to you because, you don't read into it. But for me, I thought that this was amazing. To be in the NFL top 10 players voted by your peers, that means you have to be a game wrecker. It means to me that the other NFL team has to specifically game plan around you, which means you're probably very impactful and you mean business when you game plan around them. And I thought maybe, he could have gone higher than number 10. But, I'm just being greedy, and I've never seen a Bills player ever make it that high in general, so it was very nice. But it's so cool to see the man get the recognition that he definitely deserves, because he balled out last year, and I hope he picks everything up that he did from last year and keeps growing from it. Because if he takes even another step like he did that he did from last year, it's going to be easily he's number one no matter what.
Yeah, and we talked about the list last week, and I have my points that I don't put too much stock in it. But to your point of being a Bills fan your whole life, I don't think I can name any player that made it into the top 10. So it is really cool seeing him there. I actually agree that he probably could be a little bit higher, but I like that he's a little bit lower. And it's just that little extra fuel to the fire. And, as high as, his NFL colleagues are rating him, because this is voted on by players, there's still going to be the media out there that's like, oh, last year was a flash in the pan. Let's see if he can do it again. And I think that until he's 5, 6, 7 years into his career, people are going to keep throwing that fuel on his fire, and it's just going to make him an even better player, because I feel like he's the type of player that loves playing with that chip on his shoulder. He was doubted his whole life, and the more they want to talk down about Josh, I think the better he's just going to keep getting.
That's a very good point. I think Josh Allen is a highly motivated person when faced with adversity. So, by that logic, I should have hoped that he went 99. Because then he would have just had this crazy campaign, I'm not 99.
I will show you.
Yeah, that would have been that would have been amazing to see. And plus, could you imagine Bills Mafia if he came at 99?
Shutting down Twitter.
We saw how they we saw how they reacted when Tre'Davious White came in number 95. So if Josh Allen came in the top 90s, Twitter would literally break. It would break.
Just various riots throughout the country.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that's going to bring us to our next portion of today's episode with our Wandering Buffalo interview with our guest Corey, or better known as Notch Phoenix. We have a special guest on today's show. He's a music content creator, a big Bills fan, of course, and you can call him Corey, but he's better known as Notch Phoenix. Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm just really happy that you guys are able to have me on here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we're obviously happy to have you on our show, and I can just tell already you're a huge Bills fan. I see the shirt, the mug, the hat. You got it all put together. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, how old are you? Where you're from? What do you got going on right now?
So I'm originally from the New Jersey area. I'm still residing in New Jersey. Most of my family's from the Buffalo area, so I am one of very few Buffalonians that were raised away from family. So I'm 29. I've been making music for quite some time, and I'm just, I've been a Bills fan since birth because I didn't have a choice. I'm in a household full of Bills fans. So.
Right. Yeah, that stuff usually doesn't come by choice. At least for me, it wasn't by choice.
Yeah, I was very grateful to know the passion behind Bills Mafia from a very early age. So even when we had a little bit, our team wasn't exactly at a steady pace, I was like through and through just a diehard fan. And so
that leads me into kind of my first question for you is just growing up. Who would you say was like most influential for you in your Bills fandom?
Bruce Smith, without any hesitation. Bruce, for me, I was kind of, as you could tell, I'm a slightly large guy. I wanted to play defense when I got into my opportunity to play football, and I wanted to play defensive end. I wanted to hit people. I wanted to be a threat, and I guess that personality and that energy that he put on the field, I wanted to be able to put that into the field that I played on, or however I carried myself every day. And I appreciated how he played. He was such a monster.
You must love seeing him showing up at training camp, working with the young guys then.
As soon as Gregory Rousseau ended up landing and he ended up having that video of Bruce Smith talking to him, I was just like, if he mentors him, like Gregory Rousseau and Boogie Basham are hopefully going to be very dynamic players on that roster once they fit that mold that they will hopefully figure out in a few years. So I'm really excited to see him. And plus, he looks great for his age. Fantastic! He's such a fantastic looking person, especially after not playing for so long. So
looks like he could still put up 4 or 5 sacks in a season.
My mom gave me a call and she was just like, he looks like he could still land a good 8. She's been a big fan of his as well. So
For sure. And I know you said you're in the New Jersey area. So
yeah,
what's that like? Jets, like Giants country? What kind of territory are you in right now?
I'm in the territory where it's a mix of both. It's also Eagles because I'm. Some people will argue with me about this, but I'm in Central Jersey, so it's like that middle between Pennsylvania and New York. So you get a mix of like Eagles fans, you get a mix of Jets. I see more Giants and Eagles fans than anything. But yeah, I'm pretty much in that awkward space between those three teams.
Yeah, so it definitely sounds like you're a unique NFL fan in that area.
Oh, yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. There's surprisingly quite a few people from Buffalo that live at least in the surrounding area. I actually even got excited because I found out they had a beer from Buffalo that came out, the Pils Mafia Pilsner, and I. Like just even that to me, I was excited about because the fact that Buffalo is bleeding into New Jersey like a little bit, and it's gradually getting a little bit more popular. So I'm just excited to be the one of very few to be a true fan.
That's great to hear, and I can only imagine that you probably got a lot of flack for being a Bills fan, especially if you ran into Jets fans.
Yeah.
Were you able to? I mean, I don't know how far away East Rutherford Stadium or MetLife Stadium is from you, but are you able to go to any of the Bills away games when they play the Jets?
I am very torn about going to that stadium just because for me, and I was very excited when Josh Allen poked fun at playing the Jets and the Giants and kind of being like the one New York team. Because it's like for me, it's a New Jersey, but it's two teams that are claiming to be New York, and I don't have any issues with any fan base with it. But for me, it was like Jets being the New Jersey Jets when they first started in their first year, and then instantly transitioned to New York. It kind of irked me a certain way growing up because it was like there wasn't any representation of New Jersey. So for me, Buffalo had always stayed true to their word and their values, and the fan base is always consistent. So for me, I tried to, that's what pulled me more towards Buffalo rather than being around those guys. But I just feel torn about being in that stadium because I just don't want to have any issues with any Jets fans of me coming through. And, I usually feel more comfortable at Orchard Park. So.
Okay.
I like that answer. Start to finish.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I did. But real quick, I did watch Bills versus the Jets when Tim Tebow and Mark Sanchez were still on the same roster at Orchard Park. I think it was like the last game of the season between the two, and the whole game everybody chanted Tebow, all 4 quarters, and it was like relentless. And by the time he got in, threw the ball out, didn't even try to pass it to anybody. He just walked off, and we got what we needed. But I was just happy we got that W after that. So.
All right. So, I mean, that's definitely a great memory. I can recall that game very well. Can you tell me what, maybe the most fond memory for you as a Bills fan would be?
I think my top one, and I hope this is like earlier, like when I was really trying to find myself as a Bills fan in New Jersey, Nate Clemens hitting Brady, like knocking his helmet off, everything, like just hearing the smack. Like for me, that gave me so much energy as a kid. And I just wanted that to be just a consistent thing for the rest of my life, just watching them play.
Right. I can only imagine for you, it was almost kind of like that, how you said when you were watching Bruce, it invigorated you to want to be on the field and play like that. And then when you saw that again, it was just kind of like, I need to do that. I try to embody as much as I could when I got the chance to play football. I played defensive nose tackle, and we ran, I'm trying to remember, we ran a 3-4. So I was the only person that was just haunting everybody in the middle. And I just felt so proud because I wanted to be the reason why any team that we faced, they're like, we need to watch out for him. He's the problem. So I wanted to embody that when I got the chance to bring Bills Mafia onto the field when I played. Right. You were basically Ed Oliver for Houston.
I hope this season he really has a breakthrough season, because I was a big fan of how he played because it was similar to how I played, and I want to see that type of style on that roster just be so dominant.
Right. Are you concerned that Ed's not going to break out? Like we had a discussion with the Circling the Wagons podcast with Nate, and Justin and him were kind of going back and forth about how they felt about Ed Oliver, and I'm a very optimistic person when it comes to Ed, just because defensive tackles, slow developing. He's, as we mentioned, a nose tackle, and now he's playing 3-tech. I think he's got the toolbox, and we can use the same narrative with, Dawson Knox. As soon as he puts it together, man, it's going to be dangerous, and that's what I'm banking on. And he's just so young, athletic, and I'm telling you, if it comes together, whoo-hoo.
I definitely agree with how you see it. It's I guess for me that is a tough position to be in, and especially at the time when he got into the league, there weren't as much solid players around him that were already established players, at least on the ends. So I feel like the big problem is that he was new, he was trying to figure things out, and unfortunately, I noticed this even after the last game. Some of the run game and in the middle is a little bit difficult because they seem to take advantage of the opening, and that's one thing I think that those guys really need to figure out. Overall, they're doing a fantastic job pressuring the pocket and trying to make sure that any quarterback that they're facing doesn't feel comfortable staying there. But I feel like with like Russo, with Jerry Hughes, with Epineza, like all those guys are going to be complementary players once they figure themselves out. I feel like it's going to be a complementary growing process with the whole defense. Because Oliver, when he's given a solid amount of players around him, he can make a lot of openings and pressure the pocket. And if you have Russo being a problem, they're going to veer more towards him because he big, raw talent. And once he figures that out, he's going to be a real problem. But then that gives Oliver an opportunity to make openings for himself to then really go for the kill. So he has, I saw a lot of potential last season. I think as long as we keep the momentum and as long as he stays focused and continues to improve, I think he's going to do very well this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. If, someone like Rousseau can develop quickly, that's just one more person that an offensive line has to devote attention to, and then you create more of those one-on-ones with Ed Oliver, potentially, and if you, let's say, it vice versa, okay, Ed Oliver's having a breakout year, then you start having more people focusing on him, then you have more of those one-on-ones for Rousseau. It's a numbers game, and it's going to be a beautiful thing if it all comes together as Brandon Beane has planned. So let's move on to the next question here.
Okay.
Last preseason game, we played the Packers, but next week, this coming Sunday, we're playing the Steelers, as you know.
Yeah.
Are you pumped? How pumped are you?
I am beyond excited just because I'm finally seeing a little bit of a rivalry between these guys, and I think after what happened last season, like with the whole dancing on the logo thing, and I think that added a little bit more incentive for them to have. It's not like a negative hatred kind of rivalry. I think it's just like we're going to beat you this time, or like, no, you're not. Like, I feel like it's more friendly, competitive kind of rivalry. So I'm excited for it. I'm also, I'm really interested to see with some of the newer guys and how the defense and the offense are going to look with more established roster, how they're going to turn out facing against the Steelers.
Right. And I would say over the last 2 years, I noticed that there was a turn of, I guess, the tide when it comes to Steelers, because I feel like the Bills always played the Steelers, and yeah, it makes sense. We're in the AFC with them, and every single time we played them, I swore we just got pummeled, or there was some type of defeating play out of that.
Yeah.
I think about the Stevie Johnson drop. I think about, that snow game where, what's his name, the running back who went to the Jets and then Kansas City, and now he's not there. Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, I think about how he had like a career game, like rushed over 250 yards and like 2 touchdowns or something.
Yeah.
All those memories kind of just came back to me when, the Bills played them for the past Sunday night football games, and we came out on top both times.
Yeah.
And to me, that signaled a turn of the tide.
Yeah, of course.
that this hiring of new regime in front office, like, it's working. This is what a comparable front office looks like, and we're very lucky.
Yeah, I think around the time when that massive free agency move that we made when we picked up Cole Beasley, and I think it was overall 12 players within like 3 days. To me, that was like the change, or the point where I knew something big was going to happen. Because as soon as Beasley got on the roster, I'm like, okay, like, he's a fantastic route running player. And then once that transitioned into the Bills Steelers games, knowing with McDermott having a history with the Steelers head coach, and they had a rivalry, and I felt like that it was going to bleed from coaches to the players, and not just the players, but bleed into the whole overall franchise and the fan base. And I have fans, Steelers fans, that come up to me. I have the tattoo on my arm, and I'll have people look at it and they're just like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna beat you this year." And I'm like, "Why are you trying to start why are we beefing?" Like, I was like, for me, as long as you're not a Patriots fan, I'm cool. Like, we're on the same page. Like, there are two teams that work their butts off. They have kind of similar purposes, similar fan bases, and they have a lot of heart and known for the defense. So I'm just excited to see how they both turn out for this season.
Got to watch out what you say about the Patriots here, just because Justin's marrying a Patriots fan.
Hey, look, I have no issues, but it's just
I do.
I'm trying not to ruin any chemistry between you and the missus, but
Yeah.
How did she feel about the billboard when we picked the location to be not too far from the Gillette Stadium?
So she's not like deep into the fandom, so I don't really remember getting a reaction from that. She has family out in Boston, and she was never a Bills fan growing up, and she wanted to support a team in Boston, and she was already a Yankees fan, so wanted to be the Patriots, but I mean, the Bills are better, so it is what it is.
Hey, I mean, hopefully if we end up winning a Super Bowl, I'm just saying that there might have to be a change in favorites. That's all I'm saying.
The guard. I'm working on it. But
hey, add it to the balance. That's all I'm saying.
Phoenix, tell me a little bit. We had the cut down to the 53 today. I think it's far from fully solidified. I think we're still going to see some moves. But who would you say was your biggest surprise cut today?
I think Hollister. Surprisingly, I think for me, Hollister, because Hollister had, I think, out of everybody on that roster, had a history with Josh Allen prior to the whole NFL experience. And when I saw him get picked along with Emmanuel Sanders with his chemistry and with Cole Beasley, I was thinking that was going to be a chemistry building kind of year, and trying to add familiar faces and kind of add a little bit more want to have these guys that really put in work and add that drive to compete on and off the field. But I guess for me, Hollister threw me for a loop, because I thought he would have at least, either been on the 53-man roster. Is he, like, just out of curiosity, because is he going to be on practice squad, hopefully, or has none of that been announced just yet?
It's all up in the air.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we don't know. I would agree with you. I thought that Hollister had a real good chance of making this roster. I thought he had a pretty strong camp in preseason, but maybe it was more pedestrian than we thought.
Yeah.
And other people made the team. Now, we, as Justin alluded to, there can be roster moves made, and we know of one that's probably going to happen with Reed Ferguson because he was cut, but Sal Capaccio himself said, like, don't expect him to sit on the street for too long.
Yeah.
That being said, is there someone who made this roster that you didn't think would make it?
Honestly, I feel like after watching kind of the growth of the solid 53 man roster that they've been building within the past like 4 or 5 seasons, I guess for me, it just, as of recent, I feel more comfortable and not questioning a lot of the guys that they've been putting on the roster. So I don't have anything that, or any player that comes to mind that I'm like, I don't know if they're really going to be a good fit, because like Dawson Knox, I love that man. He is a fantastic player. I know he's got things to figure out, and I know there was a bit of a concern of him not improving the way they want him to, and I know that's why they picked Hollister and a few other players. But I have 100% trust that he's going to do very well this season. And I don't really see any red flags for me or any concerns of like he made the roster. So I'm very confident with what they're doing.
Right.
All right, so got to give you the hard-hitting question. Everybody that comes on the show has to answer it. Your chicken wings. Do you prefer the flat, the drum? How are you getting them sauced? What are you dipping them in? Where's the best place to get them in Jersey?
Without a doubt, I'm not doing ranch. If somebody offers me ranch, I'm walking out. Like I've established that anytime I walk into a place, if we do ranch, I'm not eating it. Wings, I'm used to, like when I was growing up, I used to go to Anchor Bar when I come to visit family. So I was used to like really good wings. Unfortunately, in New Jersey, it's a little tough trying to find places. There's a local shop that I would go to that's called Al John's. It's kind of a small mom and pop shop that's right around the corner from my house. So I would get wings that's the closest that I could get to good wings, but I can't say that they're good enough in comparison to like, traditional like wings. I'm trying to think. I'd need to, anytime I end up having my sauce, it has to be hot. Like I don't like mild is not an option. Like I need to make sure that my stomach's hurting later on, and I'm like, it was worth it. And drums or flats. That's the only tough part for me. Because no matter which one you give me, I'm going to scarf down. So I would have to say, flats.
There we go.
I think I would have to say flats, just because, once you have them set up, you can push them, knock everything out, and then easily pull it out with ease. With the blue cheese on there, it's fantastic.
I'm getting hungry.
Right. I mean, for me personally, I'm pretty ambivalent to drums or flat. As long as it's crispy, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this interview. Notch, do you have any questions for us? Where can the people find you?
Well, to start, you can find me on Instagram, Notch_Phoenix, NOTCH_ Phoenix. I also have music on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music. I have a bunch of stuff. I just recently put out a song with Benny the Butcher as a host on my track. By the way, lovely guy. He's such a nice person. But yeah, trying to see. I think outside of that, just go Bills, and I don't know if I have any crazy questions. Actually, we didn't get the chance to talk about this. What were your favorite memories like on with the Buffalo Bills? Like, what was something that was very significant for you that remind?
Looks like we potentially lost you there, Notch, but hopefully we'll get you back here in a second.
I heard where he was going with the question, and I know my answer, and I think you know mine. It's that Kyle Williams retirement moment where McD took the timeout and pulled him off the field let the crowd give him a standing ovation. That was my favorite Bills memory.
Yeah, and for me, I'm going to go on a different route here. Most memorable Bills moment. There's like so many you can choose from, but I'd have to say that season where Josh Allen's rookie season, because that entire year it was pretty miserable to be a Bills fan.
Yes, it was.
I told myself, if I can get through this season, I can get through it as a Bills fan, and I can be optimistic of the future because I know how this team is going to look with cap, the amount of space we can do in the offseason, the draft capital we have, and it's exciting to see. It's just, again, I said it before, if the Bills front office can put it all together, and we're living in that world.
Yeah.
Because they put it all together. All right, I think that was a great question to end on. Other than that, Notch, appreciate you being on the show. You were a great guest, and obviously we enjoyed your company a lot.
And once again, I'm just happy to be here, have an opportunity to talk to like-minded fans who are really passionate about this team and what they're potentially going to lay out for the rest of the fans to celebrate for this season. So I'm just grateful to be able to be here, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Go Bills.
For sure.
Go Bills.
If you'd like to join our show, you can email us at The Wandering Buffalo Podcast, or you can give us a DM on our social media accounts by searching The Wandering Buffalo Podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to pick up with today's episode by talking about the roster cutdown. As you know, the NFL roster cutdown was today, Tuesday at 4 p.m., and there was a slew of players that were released, and I guess I'll just list them off right now, and then we'll kind of analyze it. All right. So right off the bat, we have Jake Fromm, Davis Webb, both gone. Antonio Williams, the only running back cut. As for wide receivers, Tanner Gentry, Isaiah Hodgins, and Steven Sims. Then for tight ends, Nate Becker, Jacob Hollister, and Quentin Morris. Long snapper Reed Ferguson. Cornerbacks Elijah Griffin, Cam Lewis, Nick McLeod, and Rashad Wildgoose. Safety Josh Thomas. Defensive end Mike Love. Defensive tackle Brandon Bryant. Offensive lineman Jack Anderson. Jordan Devey, Jamil Douglas. Your favorite, Justin here, Bobby Hart got cut too. And then two linebackers, Joe Giles-Harris and Markel Lee. So, that is a decent amount of players cut from the roster. And all that being said, who are your surprise cuts from that list, Justin?
So what I found with today is kind of looking back at it after I saw everything, I kind of feel like in previous years when our roster wasn't so solidified, there was a lot more surprise names to me of like people that, the camp darlings that I'd fallen in love with. And I was like, I can't believe this guy's gone. For me, the biggest obvious surprise was Jake Hollister. And I initially was thinking like, oh, that's probably just some roster gymnastics. I think he'll be back. I wasn't overly concerned about it. But then I saw they kept Tommy Sweeney. So I was fully expecting them to only keep two tight ends, with having Reggie Gilliam as that, fullback tight end hybrid type of guy. Typically they keep three tight ends, but I kind of thought that was rounding out the numbers. So seeing Tommy Sweeney stay, I'm not so confident with Hollister coming back, but maybe they want to still keep three traditional tight ends, and we do see him come back after, some of the roster moves are made. And then the initial list when I saw it, Reed Ferguson, blew my mind. We just signed him to the biggest contract for a long snapper, all that. And then Sal Capaccio reported very shortly after that they're fully intending on re-signing him tomorrow after some of the IR moves are made and whatnot. But outside of that, there wasn't really too much that really surprised or upset me. Anything for you?
Yeah, and just kind of going off of what you laid there, Sal Capaccio also mentioned that Harrison Phillips, Marquez Stevenson, Isaiah McKenzie, Jaquan Johnson, and, all could be candidates for IR now that they can return after like 3 games. So, that quick swap, all right, you made the team. Guess what? You're back. You're going on IR so we can clear space for these people that we just cut. We saw that the Bills did this last year with Andre Roberts. And to go off of the tight ends, I really thought it was surprising to see, Hollister go, because I thought he had a decent camp and he played pretty well, at least in the preseason. So I really thought he was making this team. And originally I had Tommy Sweeney making this team as well, but as the season as this camp went along, I noticed the value of Reggie Gilliam, and he, Brian Daboll said he's got to carve out a role on this offense, and I think he did a decent job of that. So I don't know if maybe they'll put Tommy Sweeney on IR. I know he was injured for a little bit, and he was walking in a boot not too long ago. So maybe something like that could happen where Hollister comes back. I'm not holding my breath, but it could happen. And in terms of other roster moves, we saw someone like Bam Johnson get shipped off to the Carolina Panthers for a 6th-round pick. And I gotta say that I don't think anyone's happy about that. Everyone, Bam Johnson's got probably a great fan group out here in Bills Mafia, and it's understandable. He's a great special teams player, tied the team for most special team tackles. He provides depth at a defensive end group. But when you look down that defensive end room, there's, it pretty much just came down to F.A. Obata or Bam Johnson. And unfortunately, Bam Johnson is not that good of a defensive end. He's a really good special teams player, but we also have a lot of special teams players on this team already. Tyler Matakevich, Tywan Jones, Andre Smith, and others. So it just makes sense that we shipped him out, and it's kind of unfortunate, but, at least we were able to get something for him, and, I think he's going to have a good time down there in Carolina.
Yeah, and days like today are when I don't envy the job of Brandon Beane. He put together this really talented roster, so, ultimately the cuts become that much harder, right? I personally love Bam Johnson for what he brought to special teams. I think he was starting to develop a little bit more as like a consistent actual defensive player. But when you start playing the numbers game, off the rip, you have Jerry Hughes, you have 3 DNs that you took in the last 2 drafts in the top 2 rounds. So none of those players are going anywhere. I thought Addison was more likely to be the odd man out, or more my preference to be the odd man out. But then you're talking, the dead cap, which wasn't killer. But I do like that if you had to move on for a player, you got something in return for Johnson versus, there probably wasn't much of a trade market out there for Mario Addison. So you'd be cutting him, not getting anything back, and have to eat the dead cap. In this situation, I think it's ultimately the right move to get something back. It doesn't really make it hurt any less for me, though.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's just go right into the 53-man roster as it stands right now. So the Bills kept 2 quarterbacks, Josh Allen and Mitchell Trubisky. Nothing surprising there. They kept 4 running backs, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, Matt Breida, and Tywan Jones. They brought your guy back at fullback or fullback, tight end, whatever you want to call him, at
My
Reggie
guy.
Gilliam. Yeah, your guy. And then I believe they kept 7 wide receivers. Diggs, Beasley, Davis, Sanders, McKenzie, Stevenson, and Kumaro.
Other guy.
My other guy. You know, this Camp Darling, I had a feeling, right, the way that people were talking about him, all the beat reporters, it's just, yeah, you know, he's there and he's doing good, but this time was different. I wasn't going to fall for the old same song and dance. Kumaro had to work for my love, and damn it,
He earned it.
he got it. He earned it, and he made the 53-man roster. How do you feel about this wide receiver room, Justin?
I love it. I really wanted us to keep 7. I just didn't necessarily see a path to it. And maybe that is part of the tough decision of letting Bam Johnson go and keeping the numbers somewhere else. I do think we're going to see probably Stevenson maybe go on the short-term IR, something like that, because I don't think there's an immediate role for him. But again, I think it's a good problem to have that I don't think you could have exposed Stevenson to waivers right now and expected him to be able to come back to the team. I think he did enough during preseason that while he might not factor in as one of our top 5 at the beginning of the year, I don't think that most teams in the NFL don't have a wide receiver room like we have, and he could have easily been a 3 or 4 somewhere else in the league. So I think you kind of had to make that move to keep him around.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that he would have gotten picked. He definitely would have gotten picked up from another team. He just showed a lot in preseason in terms of his game-breaking speed, bringing back a putt for a touchdown, and hooking up with Jake Fromm on that deep pass. He's got some wheels, and it's that helps a lot in NFL games, i.e. the Chiefs. All their receivers just run dumb fast. So the Bills got someone with that kind of speed.
In my head,
moving on.
In my head, when we did our 40-yard dashes, I looked like Marquez Stevenson.
Oh yeah. In my head, I thought I ran like Justin Zimmer.
Not too far off.
All right. Yeah. So moving on to the tight end rooms, we got Dawson Knox and Tommy Sweeney. No need to really talk about that as we already kind of dove into that. And in terms of the offensive line, we're going to mix the interior and tackles into the same category here. So we got Mitch Morse, Deion Dawkins, Darryl Williams, John Feliciano, Cody Ford, Ryan Bates, Ike Bacher, Spencer Brown, and Tommy Doyle. None of these are really surprising to me. I thought, Tommy Doyle obviously showed that he needs a little more development, and he's not close to the finished product that the Bills want. And the same maybe could be said about Spencer Brown. He only showed like one game of really good pass blocking, one game of good run blocking and pass blocking. But again, those are preseason games, and there was only 2 of them. So small sample size. I understand why these 2 made the roster, and obviously they had to make the roster. But I think they're probably last resort to be put in, and I don't think that they start this year unless they just go crazy in training, in practice, and it's undeniable.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you added your point there with like the last resort to go in thing. I think Jack Anderson was a little surprising of a cut to me, just based on it being a draft pick and being loving to keep his draft picks around, but it's a little different when you have this stacked of a roster. I'm not doing my victory lap on the Bobby Hart thing yet. I have a sneaking suspicion that with some of this short-term IR, the gymnastics they're going to do to get a couple of these players back, I have a sneaking suspicion that we have not seen the last of Bobby Hart, and I'm not jazzed about it. I'm just saying from what my gut is telling me, I feel like Bobby Hart ends up back around.
I am going to say you're wrong, and that's just because I don't want to see that. Just plain and simple. When I had to do that solo pod while you were going through some technical difficulties, I made a mention about like how he made it past the first round of cuts and how his performance in that Detroit game was so lackluster. And I remember looking dead into the camera and was like, can you imagine Bills Mafia if Bobby Hart made this roster? Like, can you actually imagine that? If he made this initial 53-man roster, I would literally be so upset with this regime just because I just don't think Bobby Hart has it, man. He's just a liability out there. And I know I just mentioned, Tommy Doyle and Spencer Brown would be like the last resort. But if, Bobby Hart was on this team, he easily is like break in case of emergency and then break again because send someone else out instead of him. Sure. Break the button of Bobby Hart so you can't send him out there. That's where I'm at. I just didn't want him.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, ultimately for me, I think it comes down to being a McDermott like to have these guys that have the starting experience, and for what that's worth, it doesn't make sense to me with Bobby Hart because I've seen him on the field and it doesn't look good to me. I don't know if they have like a preference to the starting experience. For me, there's no more ceiling to explore with Bobby Hart. And if it comes to a position where, God forbid, Dawkins or Williams has to spend some time injured or what have you, anything happens, I would much rather see Tommy Doyle out there looking bad as a rookie or Spencer Brown going through his growing pains. Because we at least know that they're gigantic physical specimens. They're very athletic. I would much rather see them go through some growing pains than trot out Bobby Hart for him having starting experience. But like I said,
and he's at the tail end of his career.
just a sneaking suspicion for me that we haven't seen the last of him. That's all.
All right, well, let's transition to defensive ends here. As you know, the Bills got Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, A.J. Epinesa, F.A. Obata, Gregory Rousseau, and Boogie Basham. So we got 6 defensive ends. Makes sense. We're going to see a lot of rotations and combinations. Maybe some defensive ends are going to rush from the inside, outside. It's going to be a lot, and it's going to be fantastic. We got a lot of length at defensive end. That's going to make throwing lanes a little harder when they throw their hands up, and it's going to be a lot of pressure. At least that's the goal.
Yeah, and for me, this is probably right up there with wide receiver for me on like groups that I'm most excited to see how it pans out, because pass rush was a weakness of ours last year, and now it just looks like we flipped the switch so fast to the possibility of it being a strength. I mean, if you're talking about hoping F.A. Obata is a contributor and Boogie Basham is developing and Rousseau starts scratching his ceiling, it's kind of like unheard of to see that fast of a turnaround in a position group. And if we even scratch the surface of what I think this group is going to do this year, I think our defense shoots right up to top 5-7 range of the league. And if you pair that with what our offense is supposed to be doing, it's going to be a scary good team, man.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. Let's talk about defensive tackles. Ed Oliver, Star Lotulelei, Harrison Phillips, Vernon Butler, and Justin Zimmer. I mean, no surprises here. I kind of wished they moved on from Vernon Butler, but then again, if they moved on from him, who were they going to bring? Brandon Bryant? I guess, but at that point, you're going to save $3 million if you cut Vernon Butler with the off chance that Brandon Bryant, a long vet in this league, can perform better than Vernon Butler, which maybe he can, because Vernon Butler really hasn't proven anything in the NFL, but we know this coaching staff loves Vernon Butler, and they say, like, if he puts it together, which is the narrative, I swear, for a lot of people on this team, it's always this. They have the traits. If they can put it all together, it's going to be crazy, which speaks to them really banking on the team's ability to draft and develop, which is the goal of, teams, and that's how you get great labor and return on investments.
Yeah, and if you asked me a month ago or so, I would have been on the train of getting Butler out of here. But the way things are shaking out, when you look at Harrison Phillips is injured right now. We don't really know how much time he's going to miss, and then beyond Starr and Ed Oliver, you start looking at what the depth there looks like. And I know some of these DNs have the ability to play a little bit inside and whatnot. And I love Justin Zimmer. But when you start talking about, kind of stopping the run, you don't really have much behind Starr and Ed Oliver. And when you're talking about these defensive ends that can kick inside, you're talking more for, a pass rush where you basically have 3-4 DNs on the field just going after the quarterback. You're not necessarily talking in the run game. So kind of stuffing up the middle, I don't think it's our strongest position on the field. I think, way too early looking at next year's offseason, or maybe one of these little moves that we can make before the season starts. I think defensive tackle is a spot that we need to look to shore up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to need some resource allocation there, whether it be draft or via free agency. I agree. Moving on to the linebackers, nothing surprising here. Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano, A.J. Klein, Dotson, Matakevich, Andre Smith. Pretty cut and dry. I think you and I both kind of predicted this would happen.
Yeah, I'm glad to see Andre Smith, and we talked a lot about him through the offseason and kind of how they protected him on the practice squad a lot last year, and I always thought he was one of the guys coming off, and he always stuck around, and just being able to see him play in this preseason, and I know you can't put too much stock in the preseason, but he looked like he belonged, and if he's what we have coming off the bench as a rotation guy or somebody that pops in for, when we actually play our base defense, which we never do, I'm happy to have him in the game.
For sure. And now let's look at the cornerback rooms. The Bills kept 5. Tre'Davious White, Teron Johnson, Saron Neal, Levi Wallace, and Dane Jackson. And when I look at this list, obviously we have our starters all there, but I mean, if Wallace or White go down, we're super
left
in the weeds. Yeah, that's a quick way to get in the weeds, and it just shows that this might also be an area where Brandon Beane needs a target in free agency or the upcoming draft, because it's a thin area on our roster.
Yeah, so going into the offseason, my biggest concerns were, what were we going to do to generate a pass rush, which we've touched on, we pretty handsomely addressed, but we haven't really done much to address the cornerback position, which, if you go way back with us and you listen to our mock drafts and whatnot, it's something I wanted to invest some high capital in. Obviously, we use that capital to shore up the defensive end position, hopefully. But when I look at this list, I'm fine with Levi Wallace starting. I know he's not, a world beater over there, but I do like him as a player. It's when we get past the top 2 and we start talking about, Teron Johnson is Buffalo folklore right now based on, he made 2 monumental plays last year. But we also can't forget that he is going into a contract year. He was benched for Cam Lewis last year, a guy who just got cut today. So, what Teron Johnson do we see? And then you get into Dane Jackson. I feel like he's more of a game time player. I think he plays better than he practices from what I can see. But that still kind of scares me. And then Saran Neal, I absolutely love the guy for what he does on special teams and whatnot. But seeing him out in coverage this preseason, that it gives me a lot of concern if he's somebody that's coming in.
Yeah, Saran Neal's a Swiss Army knife, and I like Saran Neal. I don't know what it is, but this man is all over the place, and I think he's a great value pick, value position, kind of like how, you look at Reggie Gilliam. Like, he's able to play cornerback, he can play the slot, he can play special teams. Like, that's in my opinion, like, he's like the defensive version of that.
Yeah,
but moving on.
I'll give you exactly that on Saran Neal, but to the same point, he can play, like a nickel linebacker. He can play a little bit of corner. He can play a little safety. But to the Reggie Gilliam point, I don't want to see Reggie Gilliam as my starting tight end or my starting running back, or, I want them to maintain their specialized role. But if either of our top two cornerbacks go down, that's who's up next, and that's what concerns me. I do like him as a player, though.
Right. Moving on quickly to the safeties before we get to the special teamers. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Jaquan Johnson, and Damar Hamlin. Damar beat out Josh Thomas, and that doesn't surprise me. I thought that from all reports, that he was having a good camp, and I thought he played pretty well in all the preseason games, so congrats.
Yeah, Hamlin looks like a future stud to me. I think Josh Thomas showed a lot in the preseason. He's primed up to be like one of the first guys brought back to the practice squad if he clears waivers, which I anticipate he will.
Yeah. And then, Tyler Bass, Matt Hawk, and then by some way and form, Reed Ferguson will be back on the roster because we just can't have AJ Epinesa being the long snapper. Not that he did bad, but he was just inconsistent.
Yeah, I saw, I believe Bojo shook free today. You giving him a phone call?
No. No, probably not. He's pretty inconsistent too, but so is Matt Hawk. But I need someone to actually grab the football, put it on the ground, and turn the laces out. I need you to do that. I need you to do that. And I don't think Boho can do it.
Actually, I thought Bojo had got cut. I think he ended up getting traded to the Packers, actually. So, hey, Bojo for Kumaro? Let's go.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, thank you. Anyways, let's move on to the last portion of today's episode, and we're going to just briefly talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers game. And I'm going to tell you quite literally how I feel. And I kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the episode, but I am so stoked that NFL football is back. Week 1, we're going to open this up at the Ralph or Highmark or whatever you want to call it. But the Bills are back in town. We're hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we've been victorious against our last 2 Sunday Night Football games. And we've got, Notch mentioned this too, there's a little rivalry going on between us and the Steelers. And I don't think he's wrong because we've got the best of them the last 2 times on prime time. And they've gotten the best of us for many, many years before that because we were just very inept as a team. But the turns are tiding, and I'm just excited to see Josh Allen go out there and sling it. I'm excited to see our defense in action, and we know what the Steelers are, right? And it looks like they are picking up exactly where they left off last year with Big Ben throwing like short intermittent passes, and the Bills know how to defend that. So unless something crazy happens, and I think something might be a factor here to, keep in mind, That being Najee Harris, the running back that a lot of people thought the Bills might target in the NFL draft. Obviously, we know that didn't happen, but he might be someone we might need to look out for. Justin, why don't you let me know how you feel about this game in general, and then talk to me about Najee.
So I want to project this game as a beatdown. I just think roster to roster, I think we have a better team than Pittsburgh, but they're the type of team that plays with like that blue collar grit, and they're always going to be a tough out, and you don't just go in and blow them out. What I do like about this matchup is I do like Najee Harris, but I think that they should have gone first round. They should have been addressing their offensive line. They have an aging Ben Roethlisberger back there that's not the same guy he used to be, and I didn't really see enough in their offseason to shore up that offensive line in front of him, and I love the matchup there of their offensive line versus some of our young blood pass rush coming in, and I think they're going to have a great game. I do think Najee Harris is about to eat on us. He's about to have his first NFL start and go for something like 150 yards, but it's going to be in that style of bend but don't break defense, and really try to make Big Ben be the guy that beats you. And from what we saw last year, I see it as a W. I got it at 17-28 Bills.
17-28 Bills. I got it. Oh, that's a good. One of the Steelers. Let's talk about their strengths. Short passing game and their defense. And we already addressed the fact that their wild card would be Najee Harris. I think that the Bills have a really good pass defense. They won't let you throw anything deep on them, and we don't give up those kind of completions. But then again, Ben Roethlisberger isn't gonna throw that stuff because he's getting older and he's not. I don't know if he can do it anymore. So, and then our weakness, we'll have to see. But our run defense, has it improved really much from last year? Yes, we got Starr coming back, and we saw in that preseason game against the Packers that he's able to hold his own. And when he's able to hold his own, it frees up other players to get around and read the keys in front of them, being Tremaine Edmonds and other company. So this game, I always get a little nervous between every single game, but I feel good about this one. I am going to predict a Bills W. I'm going to say 31-13. That's something that feels pretty good to me. I think that Najee will probably get like a touchdown and then just field goals for the rest of them. But I think the Bills are going to eat on this defense, especially because the Steelers weren't able to really replace who's that cornerback that you really wanted?
Nelson.
Justin.
Steve.
Yeah, Steven Nelson. Like who did they replace him with? Like nothing. There's a hole there. So yeah, I think that the Bills are going to walk away with the W, and that's going to be the best way to start off the regular season.
While we're on the topic of the Steelers, did you see? You had to have seen it. Juju doing the crate challenge.
Yeah, well, I saw him doing the tail end of it, but
bro, one week before the NFL season starts, and you're out there doing the crate challenge.
I mean, I get it, right? Like he's just trying to have fun.
He killed it.
Be on social media.
Yeah, but put that as you're 12 days away from kickoff, and you saw Stefon Diggs doing that. How are you feeling in your heart? Is it still just having fun, or are you feeling sick?
If I saw Stefon Diggs do that and complete it successfully, I'd be like, well, that doesn't surprise me. He's an elite route runner. I'd imagine he'd be able to conquer some, milk crates with ease. Toss him like 50 footballs in the process, and I bet he one-hands everything.
I'd be sick to my stomach.
No, in honesty, I mean, they can do what they want in their personal lives. I'm not here to say that they can't, but would I be thrilled to see it? Uh, I guess not. I'm pretty ambivalent to it. I just want to make sure that the guy's healthy and he completes the challenge.
You have so much more youthful whimsy than me.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and review our podcast, as well as other amazing shows that you can find on the Built in Buffalo network. We're always looking for great guests on our show. So, make sure to reach out on us on our social media platforms if you're interested by searching the Wandering Buffalo Podcast. Justin, where can the people find you?
You can find me on all social medias at jgods22. Like Andrew said, if you're ever interested in getting on the show, talking a little Bills football, we'll always find a way to get you in, so hit us up.
Absolutely, and you can find me on social media by searching Two Changs. And as always, go Bills.